Does it matter if you slice your onions across the grain or with the grain? I get this question a lot from my students and my viewers, and today we'll try to answer it in the context of caramelized onions. When I slice my onions for cooking, I always slice them with the grain, in other words, pole to pole. That's how most restaurant cooks do it in the US. And they feel very strongly that it has to be done this way. Anytime my chef friends see a home cook slice their onions into half circles, they start hyperventilating. For a salad, sure, half circles are fine. Maybe even desirable because slicing onions across the grain makes them taste a bit milder when they are raw. But for cooking, restaurant cooks find it absolutely unacceptable. I've heard many explanations as to why half circles are so bad for cooking. One explanation is a huge variation in size. Instead of even strips, you'll get some small pieces and some large pieces, so the onions won't cook evenly. Another explanation is the texture. I heard that the onions sliced across the grain will turn so soft after cooking that they'll practically disintegrate. Is any of it actually true? I don't know. So today we'll put all of these ideas to the test. We'll caramelize some onions that are cut pole to pole and some onions that are cut into half rings and see what happens. Cut the top and the root of the onion off. Be generous with how much of the root you take off. Not only does this speed up the peeling of the onion, it also helps the onion strips separate. To avoid a large and flat first piece, I angle my knife slightly in the beginning. This follows the curvature of the onion and keeps my pieces even. When your onion piece gets unstable, tilt it forward and finish slicing perpendicular to the cutting board. No more angling of the knife after the onion is tipped over. When cutting my onions into half rings, I ran into a little problem. Towards the end, the onion layers are extremely slippery in this orientation, and I had to proceed very slowly towards the end. I was hesitating to tilt the remaining piece forward like I always do because the pieces would no longer be half rings. But eventually I had no choice. This onion was so unstable that I tilted it forward and got really weird pieces. For my next onion, I tried trimming the root as little as possible so that the end wouldn't be as skinny. But it didn't completely solve the problem. Toward the end, my onion was still somewhat unsteady. I decided not to worry about the fact that my pieces were inconsistent after the tilt. When the onions are cut into half rings, some pieces are small and some are big anyway. I caramelized both batches using America's Test Kitchen steam then brown method. If you want an in-depth tutorial about this super speedy way to caramelize onions, look in the description below the video for a link. I made sure that the amount of onions, water, oil, and salt was exactly the same between the two batches. I used the same skillet and followed the same procedure. Both batches took roughly 22 minutes to caramelize. Was there any difference in taste? Not that I could tell. There was a bit of a visual difference, but once the onions were in your mouth, they were almost identical. To me, the real advantage of pole-to-pole onions is that they are a lot easier to slice. Would the results be the same for other cooking methods? Not necessarily. If I found any advantages to cutting onions into half rings, I would consider testing other cooking methods. But for me, half rings were both harder and slower than pole to pole, so I did not bother with more testing. Isn't it interesting how some advice can be good even if the explanation given for it is wrong? Which onion camp are you in? Are you a half ring person or a pole-to-pole person? I'm curious if there are other cooks out there who have tried it both ways and intentionally chose one way over the other. Let me know in the comments. Here are more thought-provoking culinary videos for you to check out, and if you are ever in the Boston area, maybe I'll see you in one of my classes.